The heavy grocery bag hit the hardwood floor before I even fully registered what I was looking at. My daughter, Sarah, was standing right in the middle of my new living room. This was the condo I had secretly signed the papers for exactly 9 days ago. She stood with one hand resting casually on her hip, her other hand sweeping toward the sliding glass door as if she were a real estate agent presenting the space to a prospective buyer. Her husband, Greg, stood beside her, nodding slowly with a yellow measuring tape coiled in his hand. "The natural light in here is incredible," Sarah beamed, tracing the sunbeams with her fingers. "And with a little furniture rearrangement, the kids could actually take the back room, and we can use the guest room for my home office and sewing space." She stopped mid-sentence when she finally noticed me standing in the entryway. The smile she gave me was far too steady, too rehearsed. "Mom," she chirped. "You're back early." I looked at her. I looked at Greg. I looked at the measuring tape in his hand. "This is my home," I stated, keeping my voice entirely flat. "Of course it is." Sarah laughed lightly, that specific breathy laugh she always used when trying to smooth over a boundary she had just bulldozed. "We were just checking out the space. We already decided the layout. You know how cramped we are at our place, and that guest room gets perfect morning light. It just makes sense for us." They had not asked. They had not discussed it. They had simply accessed my home, likely using the spare key I foolishly let her hold for emergencies during the move, and divided up my square footage. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just smiled, a thin, polite line. "I see," I murmured. "Well, I need to unpack these groceries. I'll walk you both to the door." Sarah frowned, sensing the lack of an argument. "Mom, just hear us out. The timing works perfectly for us to stay here a few days a week." I stepped aside and held the front door open. Not angrily, just open. Greg walked out first, avoiding my eyes. Sarah lingered, giving me a deeply exhausted look before following him. As soon as the door clicked shut, I picked up my phone and made one very specific phone call. The locksmith arrived in less than 45 minutes. I watched quietly as he removed the standard brass deadbolt and replaced it with a heavy-duty, high-security lock. When he handed me the 2 new keys, the metal felt cold and absolute in my palm. There would be no spare key hidden under a mat, and absolutely no emergency key handed out to family members who confused my property with their own. Once he left, I made myself a cup of black tea and sat at the small kitchen island. The afternoon sun was spilling across the quartz countertops right where Sarah had just been standing. For the last 6 years since my husband passed away, I had been the family anchor. Or more accurately, the family bank. When Sarah and Greg fell short on their mortgage, I covered it. When they wanted a new SUV for the kids, I quietly paid the down payment. I had spent so long calling my financial support love that I had completely stopped examining what else it might be. It was expectation. It was entitlement. I opened my laptop and logged into my banking portal. Every month, on the first of the month, a recurring transfer of $800 moved from my account to Sarah's to help with groceries and the kids' activities. I hovered my cursor over the automated rule. With a single click, I deleted it. I felt a strange flutter in my chest, not guilt, but a profound, sweeping sense of relief. I closed the laptop and walked into the guest room, the exact room Sarah had claimed for her sewing space. I imagined my bookshelves in the corner, a comfortable reading chair by the window, and a door that remained firmly closed to the rest of the world. The silence in the condo was beautiful. It belonged entirely to me. But I knew the quiet wouldn't last forever. The next morning, my phone vibrated on the nightstand with an incoming message from Sarah, but it wasn't about the condo. It was about her debit card declining at the grocery store. "Mom, did you switch bank accounts? My card just got declined at Whole Foods." So embarrassing. "Please fix the transfer." The text glared up at me from the screen. I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the warmth before typing my response. I canceled the transfer, Sarah. Now that I have my own mortgage and HOA fees, I am keeping my finances consolidated. You and Greg will need to adjust your budget. My phone rang less than 30 seconds later. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, what are you talking about? Sarah's voice was sharp, the sugary sweetness from yesterday entirely gone. We rely on that money. You can't just cut us off without warning. We have plans. You are 32 years old. Sarah, I replied, my tone even. It was a gift, not a salary. I am adjusting my life, and you will have to adjust yours. This is because of yesterday, isn't it? She huffed. Because we were trying to help you utilize your extra space. You're being incredibly petty. Family shares things. Family respects things. I corrected gently. She let out a loud, frustrated sigh. Whatever. We're coming over on Saturday anyway. Greg's mother is downsizing, and we need a place to put some of her antique boxes. We're going to store them in your second bedroom for a few months. She didn't ask. She simply announced it, assuming her old key would grant her unlimited access to my extra square footage. That won't work for me, I stated. We'll be there at 10, she snapped and hung up the phone. I set the device down on the counter and smiled at my own reflection in the microwave glass. I didn't tell her the locks were changed. I simply told her I wouldn't be accommodating her, even though I fully intended to be sitting right in my living room when she arrived. Saturday morning arrived with a cool, crisp breeze. I opened the balcony doors to let the fresh air in, poured myself a large mug of French roast, and settled onto the sofa with a new mystery novel. At exactly 10:15 a.m., I heard the distinct metallic sound of a key sliding into the front door. I didn't move. I simply turned a page in my book. Clack. Jiggle. Jiggle. The sound grew more frantic. Someone was aggressively pulling the door handle, trying to force the lock to turn. I stood up smoothly, walked silently in my socks to the front door, and peered through the peephole. Sarah was standing in the hallway, looking utterly baffled, holding a key that was now completely useless. Behind her, Greg was balancing 3 large, heavily taped cardboard boxes. Sarah knocked. First a polite rap, then a loud, rapid pounding. Mom. Open the door. The lock is stuck. I remained perfectly still. My phone began to vibrate in my pocket. I pulled it out, looked at her name on the screen, and silenced the ringer. I watched through the peephole as her face twisted from confusion to deep irritation. She tried calling again. She's ignoring us, Sarah hissed to Greg, her voice muffled through the solid wood. I know she's in there. Her car is in the garage. This is heavy, Sarah. Greg complained, shifting the boxes awkwardly. What do you want to do? Just leave them here, Sarah ordered, pointing to the wall beside my door. She'll have to trip over them when she comes out. She can't keep us out of our own family space. They dropped the boxes with a heavy thud against my wall. Sarah glared at the door one last time, completely unaware I was inches away, watching her every move. Sarah huffed, Fine, we'll just leave our boxes in the hall. I waited exactly 10 minutes after their footsteps faded down the corridor before opening the door to see exactly what they had intended to dump into my life. I stepped into the hallway and inspected the abandoned cargo. 3 large, dusty boxes, poorly taped with Greg's mom, Misk, scribbled on the sides in thick black marker. They smelled faintly of mothballs and old basement dampness. They truly believed my pristine, newly purchased home was nothing more than an overflow storage unit for their in-laws. The sheer audacity of it didn't anger me anymore. It simply clarified exactly who I was dealing with. I didn't call this building manager to complain. I didn't text Sarah to argue. I simply went back inside, grabbed a pair of sturdy work gloves, and dragged the boxes one by one down the hall to the elevator. It took me 20 minutes to load them into the trunk and back seat of my sedan. The drive to Sarah's house took another 40 minutes. When I pulled up to their driveway, I noticed Greg's car was missing. They were likely out running errands, perfectly content, believing they had won the standoff. I unloaded the boxes, carrying them up their front walkway, and stacked them neatly directly in front of their front door. They were stacked high enough that it would be impossible to open the screen door without knocking them over. I didn't leave a note. The action itself was the entire message. As I drove back toward the coast, the ocean air coming through the cracked windows felt incredible. I was done explaining my boundaries. I was done justifying my right to exist in my own space. I pulled into my building's garage, feeling lighter than I had in years, but my peace was quickly interrupted by a furious text that lit up my dashboard screen. "Did you dump these boxes on our porch? What is wrong with you? We need to talk. Dinner tonight. Mario's, 7 p.m. The text was a demand, not a request. I parked my car, walked upstairs, and typed a calm reply. "I will meet you at Mario's at 7. I will be paying for my own meal." Mario's was a loud, bustling Italian restaurant we used to frequent when my husband was alive. When I arrived, Sarah and Greg were already seated in a corner booth. The moment I slid into the chair opposite them, Sarah leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "You changed the locks," she whispered sharply, mindful of the neighboring tables. "You actually changed the locks on your own daughter." "I secured my home," I corrected smoothly, picking up the menu. "You humiliated us," Greg muttered, refusing to look me in the eye, leaving those boxes on the porch for the whole neighborhood to see. "Those boxes do not belong in my home, Greg," I stated. "If your mother is downsizing, she needs to rent a storage unit. My second bedroom is not a garage." Sarah crossed her arms tightly. "Mom, you are completely overreacting. You live alone in a 2-bedroom place. We are a family of 4 squeezed into a small house. It's entirely selfish of you to hoard all that space when we need it. Family shares." "You didn't want to share Sarah," I replied, setting the menu down. "You wanted to occupy. You assigned rooms before I had even unpacked. You planned to move your husband's mother's clutter into my sanctuary." Greg looked at his shoes, thoroughly embarrassed, but Sarah leaned further across the table. Her face flushed with a sudden, desperate anger. "You owe us," she hissed, revealing a secret entitlement I didn't realize she had been harboring for years. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice dropping to a near whisper. Sarah's eyes darted around the restaurant, but she held her ground. "Dad's life insurance. We know it was a huge payout. Dad would have wanted that money to help his grandchildren, not for you to buy a luxury condo just to sit in it by yourself. That money is half mine." I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking, but I felt my pulse remain perfectly steady. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. I flipped open to a page I had prepared earlier that afternoon and slid it across the table. "What is this?" Sarah scoffed. "That is reality," I answered. She looked down. On the paper in my neat handwriting was a list. $15,000, down payment for your house. $8,000, Greg's credit card debt consolidation. Ford Yarden's $500, children's private preschool tuition. Year 1, $28,800, 3 years of monthly grocery allowances. The total is over $56,000, I explained calmly. "That is the portion of your father's life insurance you have already received. Your father left everything to me to ensure I would survive my old age with dignity. He did not leave it to me so I could fund your lifestyle while you dictate how I live." Greg shifted, uncomfortably staring at the numbers. Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came out. The absolute silence at their side of the table was the most beautiful sound I had heard all evening. "I am your mother." I continued, my voice steady. "I am not your bank. I am not your landlord. And I am not your storage facility." I stood up, pulled a $20 bill from my wallet, and laid it on the table to cover the glass of wine I had just ordered. I walked out, leaving them staring at the exact price of their greed. The fallout was entirely predictable. When people lose control over you, they immediately try to control how others see you. By Tuesday, my phone began ringing with numbers I hadn't seen in months. The first was my sister-in-law, Martha. "Emma." She started using her most sympathetic, condescending tone. "Sarah called me crying. She says you've completely cut them off and locked them out. Are you having some sort of crisis? We're all very worried about you isolating yourself." "I'm perfectly fine, Martha," I answered cheerfully, wiping down my kitchen counters. "I bought a beautiful new condo, and I'm enjoying my retirement. Sarah is just adjusting to paying her own bills, but keeping family out. Martha, I have a cake in the oven." It was wonderful catching up. I hung up before she could formulate another guilt trip. I went to my phone settings. I blocked Martha. I temporarily muted Sarah's notifications. I blocked Greg entirely. I didn't write a long defensive Facebook post. I didn't call relatives to explain my side of the story. I simply refused to participate in the drama. My new neighbor across the hall, a retired nurse named Helen, noticed me watering plants on my balcony later that week. "You have a very peaceful energy," Helen noted, leaning against the divider. "Most people who move in here are rushing around for months." "I did all my rushing in my previous life," I smiled back. "Now I prefer to stand still." Silence descended on my condo for 3 blissful weeks. The mornings were mine. The evenings were mine. I painted the guest room a soft sage green and moved a comfortable reading chair right into the corner where Sarah had planned to put her sewing machine. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, a moving truck pulled up outside my building. The moving truck belonged to someone moving into the unit on the 3rd floor. The building's front security doors were temporarily propped open with heavy rubber wedges to allow the movers to carry furniture in and out. I was walking back from the mailbox in the lobby sorting through a stack of catalogs when I saw her. Sarah slipped through the propped open glass doors, bypassing the call box entirely. She marched straight toward the elevator, clutching a large tote bag. When she saw me standing by the mailroom, she froze, then her posture hardened. You blocked Greg," she demanded, marching over. "And you're ignoring my calls. You can't just erase us, Mom." "I haven't erased you, Sarah." "I established a boundary," I said, stepping into the elevator. She quickly stepped in after me. I didn't push her out. I simply pressed the button for my floor. When the doors opened, I walked to my condo. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and turned around. Sarah tried to follow me over the threshold. I placed my hand flat against the heavy wood of the doorframe, blocking her path. "Move, Mom," she said, her voice dropping. "We need to talk about Thanksgiving. You're hosting." I looked at my daughter. I saw the entitlement, the exhaustion, the utter refusal to view me as a separate human being. "No," I said softly. I am not hosting, and you are not coming in. This is ridiculous," she snapped, trying to push past my arm. I didn't flinch. I stood completely rigid. "You have 2 minutes to step away from my door, Sarah. If you don't, I will walk downstairs, find the building manager, and have you formally escorted off the property for trespassing." She stopped pushing. She stared at my face, searching for a bluff, searching for the mother who used to bend to keep the peace. She found nothing but stone. She snatched her purse tighter to her shoulder and stormed out her heavy footsteps, fading down the hall, leaving me with the one thing I had truly fought for. 6 months have passed since that afternoon in the hallway. The holidays came and went. I didn't host Thanksgiving. Instead, I roasted a small chicken, made myself a single portion of perfect garlic mashed potatoes, and drank an expensive bottle of red wine while watching a classic movie in my pajamas. It was the best holiday I had experienced in a decade. Sarah and I communicate now, but only on my terms. We text occasionally about the grandchildren. She sends pictures of their school projects. I send heart emojis. There have been no grand apologies, no tearful reunions, and I don't expect any. We have found a new equilibrium built on distance and unyielding rules. I still have not given her a key. This morning I woke up at 6:30 a.m. without an alarm. The condo was perfectly quiet save for the faint sound of seagulls near the coast. I walked into the kitchen, started the coffee maker, and moved into my guest room. The sage green paint looked beautiful in the morning light. I sat in my reading chair, running my hand over the soft fabric. Helen from across the hall is coming over for lunch later today. We've started trading books every week. I look at the space around me. There are no spare boxes. There are no sewing machines that don't belong to me. There is no one measuring my floors or calculating my worth. I take a sip of my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. The door is locked. My bills are paid. The light is incredible. And best of all, every single square inch of it is mine. Looking back, the biggest lesson I've learned from all of this isn't about real estate changing locks or holding on to money. It's about redefining what love actually looks like. For decades, I genuinely believed that being a good mother meant endless self-sacrifice, giving until my own pockets and my own spirit were completely empty. I had to learn the hard way that holding your ground isn't a lack of love. It's simply self-preservation. You don't have to set yourself on fire just to keep everyone else warm. We are allowed to transition from being the family anchor to simply being ourselves. It is perfectly okay to claim a quiet space in this world that belongs only to you, and you never ever have to apologize for it. If my story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to draw a difficult line with the people you love, I'd love to hear about your own journey in the comments below. We learn so much from sharing our experiences with one another. If you found some comfort or strength in this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to keep sharing real-life stories about finding your voice and taking back your peace. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today, and I'll see you in the next video.